Hello again, and welcome back to another episode of Flow the Grow podcast. If you're new here, my name is Sophia or Sophie, and this is a podcast for all things health and wellness, whether it is spiritual wellness, physical fitness, nutrition, mindset, outlook on life and perspective, and going through the daily challenges that life brings and flowing with it all, flowing with the growth that comes from it. And the past couple episodes, I have talked more on nutrition. We talk about macronutrients and micronutrients. And today I just want to touch on how do you know if you are in a place to track macros and, from a number standpoint, or maybe you should do food journaling or maybe intuitive eating. Like there's all these different ways, and it just comes down to knowing yourself, and there's no right answer or wrong answer. And I believe each and every one can be healthy. It just depends on where you're at in your journey. And I'm going to kind of map out how my journey has gone from one way to the next, I guess I could say. Maybe not one way to the next, but from doing things one way to doing things another way and trying out different things and experimenting. So I'm a big advocate for experimenting and doing what works best for you. Experimenting to see what works best for you. And that can change over time. Like it's not like we have to choose one way and it's going to be that way the rest of our lives. We all grow and evolve. And so the way that we do things are going to grow and evolve. Before I jump in any further, I just want to say that I have a Facebook group, a private community on Facebook where I am beginning to share more and more on fitness, nutrition, and really just pouring in a lot of value into that group. If you're someone who you really want to focus more on nutrition and reaching your goals, this is a free community and free value that I'm going to put in there daily, weekly. We already have had a live training with setting expectations as you start your health and fitness journey and how to be successful. We're going to be doing some mini challenges, and I'm going to be providing a lot of guides in there for you to help you in your journey with whatever your goal is. This group is called Food Freedom and Muscle Building Solutions. I will have the link in the show notes, but you can also reach out to me if you have any other questions. I would love to have you in there and help you in any way that I can. So in my opinion, there's really 3 ways to go about tracking food and evaluating our food, I guess, and just to help us in whatever the goals that we have, right? So first, tracking macros, and typically that is with a food scale and a food tracking app. A popular one is MyFitnessPal, but my favorite one is My Macros Plus, and I know there's so many more out there. The next is using a food journal where we write down or type out everything that we eat in a day. And sometimes when we track using the food scale or the app, I know sometimes people don't use the food scale. Maybe they just do portion sizes, just kind of estimate here and there. The food scale is probably a step above that to have a little bit more accuracy. And then food journaling is just an evaluation looking at what we're eating and not necessarily how much. Maybe you can write down, specific portion sizes or measurements and whatnot. But oftentimes, if I have a client who is doing a food journal, I just want to know more on what it is they're eating. Sometimes they'll take pictures and send it to me, so you can do that as well. But more so a breakdown of just what they're eating and when throughout the day. And then thirdly, not tracking at all and really focusing on intuitive eating and having more of a focus on our relationship with food and with our bodies and with exercise. And now I do want to say and make notes that we can do that even if we're tracking macros. Like I'm going to share a piece of my story here that actually when I started tracking macros, it helped me even a little bit more with my relationship with food and how I viewed food. But I didn't start there. So it really depends on the person. Everyone is different. You have to make that best decision for yourself. And I think that, like I said, we can work on our relationship with food with tracking macros, doing a food journal. It just depends on where you're at in your journey and where you're at mentally and emotionally with food and with your body and the thoughts that you tell yourself about food and about your body and about exercise. So again, it just really depends. And it can go the opposite way too. Maybe tracking macros is actually doing more harm than good. And I believe that that's where people can start more so with intuitive eating and with focusing on our internal thoughts and our relationships with food and, like I said, fitness, the scale, all of that. Some signs that maybe you're not ready yet to necessarily track numbers, as in macros and weighing food, and maybe even food journaling, is if you easily become obsessive with numbers or with food. Maybe you have had previous eating disorders that you're aware of, because I know some people, like, we don't even know that we're aware that we have an eating disorder or disordered eating. So if you're aware of that, just know that if you have not fully healed and recovered from that, then tracking food and using an app to put in numbers, that could be really triggering for some people. And it could bring up old eating habits and behaviors, and we definitely don't want to get to that point. And you know what? Maybe you got to try it out for a little bit, and you have to be honest with yourself and know that when those old habits come up, you can be honest with yourself and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to take a step back from this, because that's strength, that's power, and we need to make sure that you stay in a healthy mindset with this. And I would also encourage you to get a friend or your partner to help you with that, and just be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to make a pact with you, and I'm going to be honest. And if this, this is what I'm doing, and if I start to notice any behaviors from my past, I want to tell you, and I'm going to stop doing this. So it just makes it a lot, it just helps you stay more accountable, and it helps you get support. Another sign that you might not be ready to start tracking is if you are very restrictive with foods. You say you can't have certain foods or shouldn't have certain foods. Maybe you avoid certain foods, or you label foods as good or bad. Now, again, this is two-way, because tracking macros and being more flexible, tracking macros can actually help you with this, and can help you with food freedom, food flexibility, like bringing in more flexibility. So it can help, has the potential to help, and I think it also has the potential to not help. So again, it just comes down to knowing where you're at in that journey. If you are or become obsessed with hitting the goals, that can also be a sign to maybe step back and take a step back away from the tracking and doing that. And if eating healthy is only a means to an end, like almost like you're punishing yourself. Like if you say that you're eating healthy because you need to lose weight, you want to lose weight, instead of viewing it as nourishment first. I think that really helps us to cultivate a better and healthier relationship with ourselves, our bodies, and food. And then that weight loss is just kind of a byproduct over time. So like I said, if eating healthy is just a means to an end and you're not thinking about the nourishment that it provides, I think that that's something that we can work on first before we jump into tracking macros or tracking any sort of food in any way. Some other benefits of tracking that I want to note is that tracking does help you stay accountable, helps create awareness, helps create mindfulness. It can provide a better understanding of your current eating habits and behaviors. And it can also help us to see what you're eating, how much you're eating, and how nutrient dense your foods are, how much protein, fat, and carbs is in certain things. It can help to balance overall food intake, overall macros, calories throughout the day. And when I say calories, let me clarify, because I'm at a point in my journey right now where like the word calories doesn't really mean anything. Like it's just energy. It's units of energy in food, and it gives us energy. Like to me, it's nourishment. But in the past, when I would say calories and I would track or count calories, that was a negative relationship that I had with even just that word. So it's not that I'm for tracking calories and counting calories. It's just that kind of like weight loss is a byproduct, calories is a byproduct. Like overall caloric intake is just a byproduct of the food that we're eating, and that's how I view it. Tracking can also help to bring food flexibility, and it has the potential to help with our relationship with food, and to help us see that I can allow any and all foods. I can have this cookie, and I can, if I'm tracking it for my day with the other food intake and macros that I have, like it's still within my goals. Now, it's not an excuse to go and eat all the cookies and sweets and donuts and stuff in the world. but I can have balance with the foods that I eat in a day. Now, food journaling can also have the same benefits. It's just that we're not seeing the exact numbers unless you write down those, portion sizes and things. But sometimes I think food journaling can be a powerful tool just to write down, just to see what it is we're eating and then make changes from there versus having to do the numbers and things like that. If anything at any point feels stressful, overwhelming, daunting, that's also a sign to maybe step back for a little bit. I know there's an initial, maybe a little bit of stress of like how to use an app, how to use a food scale and tracking. And it's just, with learning anything new, it can be kind of stressful and challenging. And we just kind of gotta push through and come out the other side so that it's easier. And that's true with tracking too. But if you get to a point after you've been tracking for a bit and you know what, it is stressful. It's bringing you down. It's like you have so much shit going on. You just don't want to do it. It's okay to take a step back. And you shouldn't need to track the rest of your life. Once you've been doing it for a while, you can also naturally move into intuitive eating because then you have, again, more awareness around what you're eating. You can kind of eyeball different things and kind of know like, okay, maybe I need, depending on my goals, depending on my workouts, I need more protein or more carbs, whatever it is, but you should not have to track the rest of your life. That would be stressful. That would be probably not as sustainable and not as healthy mentally, emotionally, all those things. Okay. So I would recommend that if you do food journal and just write down or type out the things that you're eating, then you can kind of like do an overhaul and intake here of how much nutrients am I getting? How much protein, how much fat, how much carbs, how much fruit and vegetables, and start with one thing first. Maybe your first goal is to incorporate more protein and that's it. Maybe it's more vegetables and that's it. So focus on one thing at a time. Now, intuitive eating, you can move into this after tracking for a certain amount of time. Maybe you've reached your goals. Maybe you just want to take a step back from that and go into intuitive eating. But also intuitive eating can be a great starting point. And in fact, that's where I started at one point in my journey before I started tracking macros. So intuitive eating, it allows you to listen to your body, listen to different cues, listen to how you're feeling. And instead of having a focus on numbers and reaching certain goals with numbers that way, you can have a different focus. So you can have a focus of maybe you're going to work on that all or nothing mentality. Maybe you're going to allow any and all foods, no matter what. Like if you want an Oreo, you're going to have an Oreo. Maybe your focus is, okay, when I have a negative thought about my body, here is a positive thought that I'm going to say, or here's something else that I'm going to do to help me with working on my relationship with my body and the thoughts that I tell myself. So we're having a focus on something other than numbers, on something that's going to help us to view food in a different way. For me, it started many, many, many years ago, but I started with restriction, avoiding foods, and overworking out. Eventually, that led me to restricting and binging and overexercise. And that led me to the all or nothing mentality. It led me to yo-yo dieting, jumping from one diet to the next, jumping from a cleanse to a different program. I saw certain foods as bad. I can't have that. I shouldn't have that. That's not going to be healthy for me. That's not going to be good for me. I worked out as a form of punishment. I worked out because of foods that I ate, or because of alcohol that I drank, or because I felt a certain way, or because I had these negative thoughts about my body and I wanted to, quote, work off those calories. I wanted to work off that food, the alcohol. It was only a means to an end. I just wanted to get smaller and smaller, skinnier and skinnier. Like this is all a part of diet culture. And now that I'm out of that, I only want to help people get to this point too, and to get away from diet culture. And to also help you come to a place where you're free from those things. And eventually I was like, okay, enough is enough. I have to make a change here. It was like I was out of control. Like I couldn't control food. So I had to be on a cleanser. I had to be on a program. And then I would restrict massively. And then the cycle just continued. So eventually I was like, I need to get a handle on this. Like, I don't want to go through this emotional roller coaster for the rest of my life. Like, I need to do something. I want to be in control. I want to be in control of food. I want to be able to be okay with not working out in a day. I want to be okay with eating certain foods and not feeling super guilty and regretful and emotional and just so full, like eating to the point where I'm full. And I ask myself, why am I still eating? It's like I'm eating so fast and I don't know how to stop. I can't stop. And that's where that restrict binge cycle just kept coming into play for me. So eventually I did make a change. I started therapy and I went, that was the reason I went. And I went to a couple different therapists, worked through some stuff. And even before that, I started working on I tried working on the thoughts that I would tell myself. Like if I saw myself in the mirror, I didn't like what I saw, I would try and like think of a positive thought. But really, I feel like it didn't I didn't make true changes until I went to therapy for it. So I started doing a lot of inner work. At that time, I also around that time, decided to not step on a scale or like anything, even an in-body scan, which showed muscle and body fat and water weight and like all the things, not just the number on the scale. And even though I was even more in a healthier place than previously, I still would feel this pressure and it was like nothing was ever good enough. Like maybe my body fat went up more than last time. Maybe it went down. Maybe my muscle went up. But like no matter what, I still had this internal like disappointment and discouragement and just pressure on myself. So I was like, hey, I'm going to not step on the scale. And I didn't for an entire year at least. And that also helped me to put focus on other things, to put focus on how I was feeling, to put focus on different goals, maybe just getting stronger, maybe just being able to lift heavier weights. So I worked on inner work, went to therapy. I started working on my mindset and I started changing how I viewed food. I started viewing food as nourishment. I started working out and thinking about, okay, I'm working out and exercising because I love my body, because it's strong, because it has the ability to do a lot, because it helps improve my mental health. It helps my productivity. It helps me with my mood and my attitude, and my outlook on life. And it helps me do all these other things. And I'm not focusing on the physical changes. Like I'm not focusing on, I'm getting leaner or smaller, or like I feel heavier today, like whatever it was, I was not focusing on that because I was focusing on all of these other things. And then eventually I was like, I'm going to allow any and all food. I remember moving into my studio apartment like a couple years ago, and I got I got chocolate. I got like these cookie in a cup, brownie in a cup things. Like I kept things in my pantry, in my apartment. And every day I told myself, every day I'm going to have a little bit. Like after dinner, for some reason, I just always wanted a sweet. So instead of being like, okay, I'm going to have fruit, I'm going to have this other thing. And I found that I was able to just eat that, like one muffin cup thing, whatever it was. And I was good. I would go take a bath. Like I would just hang out and I would not eat anything else. I was good. And so it slowly turned into this natural balance. And it didn't happen overnight. It was accumulation of all of these things. But then I naturally fell into that because I worked on myself, because I did the inner work. I started actively, consciously trying to change the thoughts that I had about food and my body and about exercise and about movement. Because I let go of having the all or nothing mentality. I stopped saying I can't have these foods. I stopped restricting foods. Instead of like restricting foods and avoiding foods, I just thought of what can I add more of? And I just allowed the foods that I used to restrict every day. And I remember there've even been times where it was like I allowed these foods, but I kind of had a lot of it. But then over time, that became less and less. There's like an initial, like, okay, you allow these foods and I'm going to have I'm going to have this cookie at this bakery. Go to a coffee shop. I'm going to have this muffin there. I'm going to have it's kind of like FOMO was catching up to me, like fear of missing out. And the things that I restricted so much in the past was catching up to me. And I was eating more of those things. I was like, yep, I'm not going to restrict. I'm just going to have it. And now now, if I go to a coffee shop and I see this cookie that looks so good, it's not like I'm forcing myself to not get it. It's not like I'm also wanting it so I get it. It's like I see it. Oh, that looks really, really good. Do I want it or do I not? And like sometimes, yeah, I'll get it, but it's also an easy no a lot of the time. And it's effortless. Whereas, before it's hard, like I said, like controlling food wise, like if I see something, I just want it so bad, but I'm really trying to force myself to not eat it. It's kind of also hard to explain. So I feel like if you've been there, you will know what I'm talking about. So after having this natural balance, I haven't been tracking, I haven't been really doing any of that. This is like the universe really did have my back. And I believe the universe has our back timing wise. Everything happens for a reason. But then Kiana came into my life and we had talked about, she mentioned tracking and doing macros and things like that because she had listened to an episode about, I don't remember exactly what episode, but maybe about my past with restricting foods and things like that. And she had mentioned that maybe this, counting macros, tracking macros would actually help you. So that was my starting point for tracking macros. I got a food scale and she showed me how to do the app, and it was hard at first trying to get the hang of everything, and it was kind of annoying and stressful and whatever, but there's a learning curve as with anything that's new. So it took me a little bit to like get the hang of it, and now it's super easy for me. But that also helped me and propelled me forward into flexible dieting, flexible eating. I don't even like the word dieting, but flexible eating and incorporating really whatever foods I wanted, a focus and emphasis on nutrient-dense foods, of course, but then being able to have, implementing other things like a donut or a cookie. And then also, it did hold me accountable. At first, it was hard because I didn't want to see how much peanut butter I was eating. I didn't want to see I didn't want to see certain amounts of food that I was eating because I was scared. I don't know. It's weird. I don't know. I don't even know how to explain it, but it is what it is. That's what happened. But eventually that kind of also fell into a natural balance. Like I feel like some things I tracked, some things I didn't. I just kind of was like letting myself experiment and learn how to do those, certain things. And I didn't really, I did have specific goals. So I tracked for a few days and then she gave me like a specific goal that I had, but it was cool because it let me see how much protein, how much fat, how much carbs I was eating, and then being able to have a goal to shoot for. And it also kind of led me to realizing that carbs are powerful. That's the word I'll use. Carbs are powerful, and macros and seeing all of that helped me to be more mindful. And then from there, like it's kind of been on and off of tracking and trying to hit certain goals. And now it's actually kind of fun for me. Like I like trying to hit my goals. And through that, it's like now I just want to see what more food can actually do for me and my goals. And not even just like physique wise in my body, but how it's going to impact my energy, my day-to-day, my workouts. So like now I'm in a place in my journey where, and I believe I was in a place in my journey where that was a healthy thing to do, was to start tracking macros. I feel like I did things right, like in the right timeline there, versus if I were to have tracked macros before I started doing that inner work and working on my relationship with food, on the relationship that I have with myself and my body, I think it would have created a lot more chaos, a lot of inner turmoil, and it just wouldn't have worked out the same way. But that's just me and my journey. I'm sure some people, maybe they start with tracking macros and that's how they were able to come to a place of food freedom and of not yo-yo dieting and of not the all or nothing mentality and of having a healthier relationship with food in their body. So this is just my story, and that's just what really helped me and worked for me. So you may see online, you should track macros, you should do this, you shouldn't track macros because here's why it's bad, or you should eat more intuitively. Like all these people saying what you should and shouldn't do and what's healthy and what's not healthy because of certain reasons. And I really think that everything can be healthy and everything is healthy if you're in a spot where it's going to be healthy for you. If you are in a place in your journey where it's right for you to do whatever it is, whether it's tracking macros, food journaling, intuitive eating, focusing on just your mindset, focusing on the relationship with your food and your body and the thoughts that you tell yourself, and on getting away from diet culture and healing from past eating disorders. So it really just depends. And you either have to know that for yourself and know kind of where you stand in your journey and what's going to be most beneficial to you and what's going to help you the most, or you got to get support and kind of get someone from the outside looking in to see kind of where you're at and to ask questions so that they can gauge, okay, maybe we need to first start with your viewing on food. Maybe we need to just start there, or maybe we're ready to start tracking macros. I think everything in life is so individual. Everyone is so different. But personally, I do think it is super important to first make sure that you have a healthy, solid relationship with food, with exercise, with your body, with your inner thoughts. And then it can be really a powerful tool to start a food journal or to start tracking your macros, your protein, fat, carbs. And if you find that you hate it, let's say you start tracking and you hate it, that's okay too. I don't believe that we need to track in order to reach our goals. Yes, it can be helpful, but we absolutely don't necessarily need to. Again, just comes down to you, the person, and what you like and don't like. And maybe eventually over time, 2 years from now, you try it again and you're like, oh, I really do like, tracking macros. I like this a lot. It's a challenge. It's fun. It is going to hold me accountable. So like I said earlier, it's okay to change, permission to change what you like, what you don't like, permission to change your beliefs and your opinions on things. And I think one tip and thing that I can give you that would apply to all three of these, whether you track macros, whether you food journal, whether it's intuitive eating, a good mindset tip and thing that you can implement is to add more, not restrict. So instead of restricting certain foods or avoiding certain foods or saying you can't have certain foods, or trying to eat less of a certain food, think about what you can do or add more of, whether it is adding more proteins or adding more, going out for a walk, or adding more sunshine, adding more sleep, water, vegetables, fruits, whole foods, adding more stress-reducing activities, adding more meditations. Do you know what I'm saying? Adding more versus doing less or taking away or restricting or avoiding. Okay, that's that. That's all I have for you for today. I hope this was helpful. And if it was, I would love if you would please share it with a friend or a family member, or let me know what you learned. Let me know what you took away. Maybe even put it up in your stories so that other people can see this episode if you found it helpful. And tag me at Sophia_Dawn41. And the podcast Instagram is at Flow with the Girl Podcast. I'm on Facebook. Again, Food Freedom and Muscle Building Solutions Facebook group. You can also email me at flowwiththegirlpodcast@gmail.com. Next week, I will be talking about the restrict binge cycle and how you can end the restrict binge cycle. As always, thank you for being here. I love you. I appreciate you. And with that, I hope you have a great rest of your day, night, week, weekend. Bye for now. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Flow with the Grow. I'll see you next week for your daily dose of positivity and growth.